Welcome to Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. Today we will take a look at one of the great success stories in wildlife conservation. In the early days of our country, wildlife was everywhere, and seemingly there could be no end to it ever. It was a natural bounty, but it was abused by man, and before too long it began to disappear and soon needed help. As a result, the new science of wildlife management emerged, and like most new sciences, its research and management programs needed coordinating to most effectively help wildlife survive. To solve this problem in our country, a unique partnership was formed nearly 50 years ago. Leaders in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, fish and game departments of various states, along with universities and private organizations, established groups called Cooperative Wildlife and Fishery Research Units. Located in 29 states at 31 universities throughout the country, the wildlife and fishery units coordinate the research efforts of the participating scientists and organizations. To better understand this unique partnership, we will observe the field research of some of the co-op units. Our first stop will be the Boulder Escalante Mountains in southern Utah. Joe Slattery reports.
Here in this ruggedly beautiful country, research is being conducted by the Utah Cooperative Wildlife Research Unit on the cougar, which will require the capture of this big cat to fit it with a radio telemetry collar. He is now aware that the dogs are on his trail. These highly trained dogs are closely followed by a professional tracker who has been on the trail for over an hour. Arnold Button will refresh his horse here until he is joined by the two men from Utah State University who are conducting the research. Dr. Fred Lindsay, Professor of Wildlife Science, and Dan Barnhurst, Graduate Assistant. Dr. Lindsay and his research team have been conducting cougar studies here for a number of years now. Dan wants to know how many cougars live in this area. Only with the help of dogs can enough cougars be captured to determine their present numbers and habitat needs. Information being gathered by Dr. Lindsay's unit will be used by the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources to develop management programs for cougars. It is an excellent example of the research services being supplied by co-op research units to a state agency. The cougar can outrun the average dog for short distances, but the big cat tires when the chase is long. The cougar will be kept at bay by the dogs. Their barking will direct the research team to the area. Although the cougar's capable of killing a dog, he would prefer to avoid a conflict by staying in the tree. Arnold has stayed close behind and is the first to arrive. Dr. Lindsay and Dan waste no time in moving toward the barking sounds. They must hurry to prevent the cougar from leaving the tree. The first thing the men have to do after seeing that the cat is at bay is remove the dogs from the immediate area so that the cougar can be taken from the tree.
We return now to the Boulder Escalante Mountains in southern Utah for a continuation of Joe Slattery's report as the cougar in the tree is about to be immobilized.
The barking of the dogs will probably keep the cougar in place until Dan Barnhurst can fire the dart containing the immobilizing drug. A perfect shot in the rump. Next, a rope will be used to lower the cat from the tree. But Dr. Lindsay will wait until the drug has taken effect. The cougar's general behavior tells the scientists that it is still too soon to approach the animal. Dr. Lindsay watches closely for the first sign that the drug is working. Enough time has passed now for the cougar's hind legs to hang limply, partially immobilized, which is the sign they are looking for. It is now safe for Dan to start to remove the cougar from the tree. As he climbs, Dan's eyes never leave the cougar, which can be dangerous if it is still able to use its front legs and claws. First, a noose must be placed over the cat's head and one shoulder. With the rope placed over a branch for support, it will be possible for Dr. Lindsay to lower the cougar to the ground. By quickly getting a rope around the drugged cougar now, injury to the cat and a fall from the tree can be prevented. With the loop securely under one of the cougar's front legs, Dr. Lindsay can now use the rope to raise the cat off the branch. Although the cat can still move, it is unsteady and rapidly losing strength. Now the cat is almost completely immobilized. The task of lowering the drugged cougar to the ground is done with ease and safety to both animal and man. The immobilizing drug will keep the cougar in an unconscious state just long enough for the research team to do its work. The cougar is unaware of anything that is now happening. since the drug used is a combination immobilizer and tranquilizer. After Dan removes the dart from the cougar's rump, the next step is for Dr. Lindsay to open the adjustable radio telemetry collar that the cat will wear for the next 2 years, at which time the batteries will have run down. The cougar will be recaptured at that time, and the collar will be replaced, because long-term information about the cat's movements and habitat needs is required by the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources. When the transmitter in the collar is activated, it emits a radio signal of a special predetermined frequency, which will identify this particular animal. Radio telemetry has made it possible to gather the needed information without disrupting the cougar's normal routines. Because it is necessary that the collar be on the cat for such a long time, the cougar's comfort and safety require that great care be taken to make sure that it is fastened securely. Certain data, especially important to this project, is carefully recorded. First on the list is determination of the animal's age. The length of the teeth and the amount of wear on their surfaces will tell the research scientist this cougar's age. This tooth indicates that the cat is a youngster, about 2 years old. It is important for Dr. Lindsay to know the age of each animal in this long-term study to fully understand social relations and survival rate, as well as the rate and frequency of cub births. There is very little risk in immobilizing an animal with the modern drugs available, and this cougar will completely recover shortly. The men will stay nearby just to make sure that no harm comes to the temporarily defenseless animal. Slowly, its senses return, and soon the research team will be receiving data about the habits of this species of cat. The work being done here today may very well ensure the future of the cougar.
The research conducted by the Wildlife and Fishery Co-op units located in 31 universities across the country is extensive and covers particular wildlife management needs of the various states. In Maine, the Cooperative Wildlife Research Unit is conducting research on moose habitat use for the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. The program is under the supervision of Dr. James Sherburne, the unit leader. To get the necessary information, graduate student Alan Crossley places radio collars on swimming moose. This method, which uses no drugs, is observed by Jim Fowler. With the collar in place, an identification tag is attached to the moose's ear. Jim Sherburne and his co-op research unit will follow the movements of this moose in its habitat for several years. The information they gather will contribute to the future of this splendid animal in Maine. In Wisconsin, the Co-op Wildlife Research Unit is conducting studies at the Horicon Marsh on Canada geese to learn more about their migration patterns and mortality rate. The study will help forecast next year's goose population here. The field study is under the supervision of Dr. Scott Craven. These geese, baited here with corn, will be captured and fitted with blue identification collars like the one being worn by this goose previously caught. Scott works closely with two assistants who will be most helpful in capturing the geese. The area baited with corn is directly in front of a large cannon net hidden in the weeds nearby, which is fired when Scott gives the order. These netted Canada geese will help in the development of improved waterfowl management programs. In Alabama, the Co-op Research Unit at Auburn University is conducting a study in this sandy, pine-studded country of Georgia to determine the habitat requirements of the indigo snake, which is threatened with extinction. The indigo, which is the longest snake in North America, is important because it controls the rodent populations of this area, as well as being an active predator of the eastern diamondback rattlesnake. Both the diamondback and the indigo snake of this sandhill area live in deep burrows, which are dug by the gopher tortoise and are ideal shelters from heat and cold. This research team is tracking an indigo snake carrying a tiny radio transmitter whose dying battery will be replaced by the leader of the Co-op Research Unit, Dr. Dan Speak. James Altier selects the proper frequency, and the receiver now picks up the signal from the snake's transmitter. The signal is strong, indicating that the snake is nearby. The signal leads the research team to the nearest gopher tortoise burrow. Dr. Speak will use a long black hose, which he inserts into the opening of the burrow to find out if the indigo snake is inside. The sand is cleared out of the hose with a puff of air, and now Dr. Speak hears the hiss of the indigo snake in the burrow. By shaking the hose vigorously, Dr. Speak hopes he has created a disturbance that will drive the snake out of the burrow. The members of the research team are not surprised when an indigo snake appears. This is the indigo the men have come for, because protruding from its side is the antenna of the transmitter, which was surgically implanted. The transmitter will be replaced in the laboratory and the snake released to once more add information to the study of the rare indigo snake. In the Ozark Mountains of southeastern Missouri, research is being conducted to determine why the mortality rate of white-tailed deer fawns is over 50% in their first 6 months of life. The Missouri Cooperative Wildlife Research Unit is studying the causes of this high fawn mortality rate in this area. The study is under the direction of Dr. Tom Baskett, leader of the Missouri unit. Today, the men of the unit, with the help of radio telemetry equipment, have located a doe which was fitted with a radio collar when it was captured last year. This deer study is being conducted for the Missouri Department of Conservation and is under the supervision of Norb Geeseman, the department's wildlife research biologist. With the doe nearby, the men know that at this time of the year, they will almost always find a fawn hiding not too far away. The fawn will remain motionless until forced to move. Now, white plastic gloves will be used to minimize the human scent on the fawn. Graduate student Chris Dalton will determine this young fawn's sex and approximate age and size. Periodic checks throughout the year will update this original information. Next, Chris will place a radio collar around the fawn's neck. Shaking the collar activates its transmitter, which will emit a signal as long as the fawn is moving. And when the signal stops, the fawn is presumed dead. The carcass is then recovered to determine the cause of death. The collar is in place and working, and the final task in the field is to ear tag the fawn for identification. Now free to leave, the young deer looks about carefully to locate its mother, which has remained nearby. This research in southeastern Missouri is another excellent example of the benefits derived from the Cooperative Wildlife Research Unit's program, the unique partnership. The Cooperative Research Unit's program has been a model of state, federal, and private cooperation through research and education. This unique partnership has provided a great deal of the information on fish and wildlife biology used to manage our natural resources today, and through the years has provided advanced training for thousands of wildlife management graduate students. The future of much of our fish and wildlife depends upon the management programs developed from the research of these important wildlife projects. The Cooperative Research Unit's program has truly been a success story in conservation, and it is to the long-term benefit of man as well as the wild kingdom.